we are very quick to assume cosmic interference rather than turning our awareness to the fact that it's the same old identity, it's the same old habits, it's the same old turning around when the fear grows too much. It's the same old turning a blind eye to where we're avoiding discomfort. It's the same old truth that we cling to instead of being willing to evolve past our comfort and what we know to be who we are. To break this down in a more, I guess, simplistic manner, this is to say, a lot of times we would even rather believe that there's some sort of outside force, some sort of outside energy that is limiting our possibilities and limiting our possibilities and capabilities when that's not the case at all. And actually, we're refusing to do the sort of muddy groundwork that is actually moving in a different way, taking different actions, and making different choices. And the reason that so many people can, I guess, benefit off of selling you some sort of process that is much deeper and much more intricate is because there's a lot of ways to go about getting to the same destination, right? And there's a lot of things that we need to do. But if you feel stuck, and if you feel like anything that you're doing is only yielding the same sort of results, and maybe any happiness that you feel is temporary, or any sort of momentum that you feel is, I guess, short lasting, then the problem isn't what you're doing. The problem is what you're not doing. It's not who you are, it's who you're not. Because who you are now is yielding, attracting, and sort of pulling in the same sort of situations that have been repeating for a long time. So it's not about who you've been. It's not about that there's a problem with who you're being. There's no problem necessarily. We like to believe that the outside universe, that reality, has an opinion on our state of being, on our path. And we have to realize the entire perception, the entire point, the entire purpose of all of it is to point you back within yourself and to realize that you have the power to change your circumstances in a variety of ways. You can, of course, regulate your emotions and create a different state of being inside yourself. But more than that, you are capable of all the actions you wish to take that will influence the way that reality sort of sends those signals back to you. You are capable of going out of your comfort zone. You're capable of giving that speech. You're capable of giving um, that energy to people that you've always wanted to. You are capable of being that person that you've always wanted to become. And it's not about necessarily how do we become them? It's how do we stop getting in our own way? And that's why we love to assign and point blame and responsibility outside of ourselves. And this is something that pops up in a lot of different areas of life and in a lot of different, I guess, beliefs, you can call it. And it's because we're refusing to take accountability for what is possible in our life. And there's a caveat, of course. There are a lot of things in our past and things that happen to us that aren't in our control. But doesn't this create a very easy to understand divide between things that are and aren't in our control? Things that aren't in our control are not a part of this sort of schooling that we must go through. You know, the things that we experienced in the past that we couldn't control, they could be seen as lessons. But think about it, they're only lessons if you change your actions in response to those experiences. Nothing is inherently a lesson. The universe doesn't have an opinion on which direction you should take. You know, and your mind doesn't have a bias. It doesn't have a prejudice into making you feel miserable, into sending you all these negative thoughts, into sending you all these negative emotions. You have to stop pointing blame outside of yourself, and that the things that we can't control, even though things may happen, it's not because of any sort of negative ill intention towards us. That is a very human concept. That's not a reality concept. That's not a fundamental law. And that's not a mental concept either. It's not an inner work. It's not an inner relationship between us and our mind type of concept. That's a very interpersonal, human, I guess you could say, product. And that is humans act in ill will towards each other, but the ocean doesn't act in ill will towards you. It may act negatively. It may sweep someone off, into the ocean, off the shore. but it didn't do that because of their past experiences. It didn't do that because of the person that they were. And this is how we look at reality as well. We see maybe a series of disappointments, a series of letdowns. And instead of looking deep within ourselves and seeing what can I do from this point forward to change the results of my reality, we instead try to figure out why reality happened in the way that it did, instead of pointing the mirror back at ourselves and saying, how did I play a part in drawing forth this experience? And this isn't, I'm not even saying this in a spiritual way. I'm more saying this in a way that personal responsibility is the only way that we can grow. It's the only way that we can actually do the things that we want. And sometimes it's not about seeing things so existentially. It's not always about seeing things in the way that the universe aligns them, but more so, look in the mirror and look at your actual groundwork actions. Have you truly given all that you can to extend the possibilities of your capabilities? And the answer is almost always no. We always could have put ourselves out there a little bit more. We could have inconvenienced ourselves a little bit more to overcome that difficulty, to overcome that fear. And this is not to be confused with what cannot be controlled. What cannot be controlled is none of our business. And that's what we tend to do. We like to spend a majority of our time understanding how to control the things that we can't control instead of going deep into the intricacies of what we know we can control. Does that make sense? So we seek wisdom, we seek universal knowledge, not because we're truly interested, but because we want a way out of the extremely difficult work that is changing ourselves practically at a ground level. And that wisdom, that universal, principles and laws of reality, all that stuff is available to you. You can learn that at any moment because it is not dependent on anything else except for you having the awareness to know it. And that's what happens to people. They get very aware, they become very aware, they consume a lot of knowledge, a lot of videos, a lot of books, whatever it may be, but they don't necessarily have a deep relationship with themselves to call their own selves out when they're not, giving it all that they can. And this is often what happens is, even from a more spiritual outlook rather than psychologically, is that we keep looking outside at the universe, right? Or reality. We keep looking to understand how the universe and reality works, and we're met with a lot of information, right? But not a lot of practical tools that can actually help us. In a way, you need to experience desire, experience the accomplishment and achievement of that desire before letting it go actually means anything. And I don't mean that hyper specifically on the concept of desire. I mean that for everything. You can't give up personal responsibility in search of more otherworldly wisdom and more existential knowledge because you're not being truthful and honest to yourself. You still want the things of life. You still want to reap the fruits of your labor, but you're surrendering that process because it is difficult. It is muddier. It is dirtier. You don't want to get your hands dirty, but we have to. That's how it works. Our feet have to be buried in the dirt while we reach for the sun. And if either polarity is too much and we have the awareness to notice, then we're going to start to enter a cycle. And you could recognize these cycles. You could recognize them. There's probably many different little ones all over the sequences and situations of your life. The same repeating feelings, the same repeating actions, the same repeating frustrations. These cycles exist all over our life, and it's not because we don't have the capability to escape them, but we don't want to get our hands dirty. We don't want to inconvenience ourselves. We want it to be easy. We want it to be easy. It's not. It's not. And even, I'll touch on this because I know there's a lot of, under the law of assumption, under manifestation, there's a lot of, I guess, thoughts about it should be easy, it should be flowing. And I do agree on some level, but I do believe that without the mental resiliency to not let yourself get sidetracked by negative thoughts, by negative emotions, being frustrated by the lack of results, you won't even be able to access the sort of state of stillness that is needed to uphold these practices of manifestation and flow and whatever else. So that's the only sort of touch that I'll give. And I actually invite something uh, much more applicable usually, and that is that if you want to manifest something, just work as hard as you can to get it, all the while imagining you already have it. So you get the best of both worlds. You do what the sort of spiritualists say, and you also do what the practical, I guess, materialists say. And that's the best way to go about it, because that's the beauty of it. You'll never really know which one worked. It could be one, it could be the other, it could be both. Either way, you have it. And then from having it, from experiencing life, from experiencing the things that you want, then if you decide to do so, you can let it go. And letting it go or holding on isn't inherently more spiritual than the other. It's just a process of personal evolution and personal choice. Because that's a big theme as well. In when we start to not point blame at reality, when we start to not point the finger at life, and we instead point a mirror back at ourselves, we start to understand how free we truly are. That we are so free that we can lose ourselves. We are so free we can fear, crazy, unknown, imaginary events. It is because we are that free that we have these sort of tribulations. And this works at a mental and physical level. Why are so many people struggling with mental health issues? Do we really think that it's because those mental health issues didn't exist before? Or do we have more time? Do we have more space to open up a conversation about those issues? Do we have the time? Do we have the comfort to not suppress those issues under the rug and sort of costume them with bad habits? That's kind of what it is. As we create more room in life, as we create more space, physically in the practical material world, we create the same amount of space for spirituality and, deep psychology and whatever else you kind of want to throw in there as a sort of healing and evolutionary standpoint. So it's never about looking outside. It's about what are the circumstances right now? Where am I? What is possible? And how do I make the absolute most of the hand of cards that I was dealt? And I know in a lot of videos I come back to this similar theme. That is, we are dealt cards, and we always are dealt cards. That's the beauty of the game of life. You are dealt cards. Everyone is dealt different cards. And I'm not saying our overall life. I'm saying this might be at the beginning of the week, or even a situation, how a situation plays out. You are dealt cards. And I like to think of the universe not as playing alongside you as a competitor or even playing alongside you as the dealer, but rather it's the one that plays the cards with absolutely no objective in mind. More than anything else, it's extremely interested to see how you play your hand. And in learning how to play our hands differently, we understand the game better, you know? And eventually, maybe we will come to a point with age or whenever else. And for me personally, I am nowhere near wanting that. But there will come a point in letting go of it all, letting go of the entire game. You see the cards and you say, I no longer want to play. But I think people do that too early. And it comes back to that same theme of wanting to abandon and wanting to not do the difficult work. You didn't come here to escape it all. You came to transform your life through wisdom, through application. When I say come here, I'm using that as a sort of metaphor for coming into life. Um, but there's no outside force that is holding you back or is looking to punish you or humble you or do anything for you. You are so utterly free that your reflection is the one that is holding you back and you're blaming it on the universe. Psychologically, we see this from many different applications. We see this from many different examples, I should say. Healing is difficult and it's not pretty most of the time. And we can't expect everything to be pretty and also awesome. I know those words are a little generic for the type of topic that we're talking about, but I actually think they sum it up pretty well. Because in, obliging and in going deep within your own darkness, in seeing your dark side, seeing your shadow, seeing those negative thoughts, not aligning with them, seeing those negative emotions and giving them space, detaching, all the while observing them and understanding why maybe they're, I guess, being brought up, we learn so much. And that's how wisdom is applied. Wisdom isn't applied by learning it, having the realization, and then sort of believing that somehow the universe is now going to change everything around you as a product of that realization. The realization is the invitation to a new reality, to a new you. That's what the realization is. When you read a book, when you listen to a podcast, when you watch a video, whatever it is, the realization is the invitation. Whatever mechanism, I guess you could say, the universe is using to withdraw, and not withdraw is not the right word, but I guess throw that wisdom towards you, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a book, whether it's a video, whether it's a synchronicity, whatever it may be, or whether it's just an epiphany you come to on your own sort of devices. Spend less time questioning the nature of the realization and immediately jump to an actionable mindset in which say that this wisdom is not for no reason. This thing that I've realized, this sort of knowledge that I've become aware of, it's an invitation from, you can even say, a higher plane or higher realm, or maybe even your higher self, whatever it may be, however you want to frame it. There's something happening. There's something very interesting happening where you are being delivered knowledge, and that is an invitation to something you've always wanted. Or maybe it's an invitation to something you never even knew you wanted, but something that will fulfill you to a degree you could have never even imagined. We doubt the capabilities of life. We doubt the possibilities of the amount of ecstasy we can experience by changing ourselves and changing the way we interact with fear, by changing the way we interact with life. You need to see the realizations as invitations. There's nothing outside of you that is trying to limit you. If anything, the limitations are self-imposed. And that's if anything. Even though self-imposed limitations are made of dust, you can walk right through them. We create these imaginary rules. We create these imaginary boundaries and limits, and we treat them as if the universe had assigned them to us. But that's not what happened. Those weren't even in the cards that you were dealt. The cards that you were dealt was, if we want to look at it from a very wide point of view, it could be your hometown, your family, your social circle, your upbringing. These are the cards you were dealt. And if you want to look at it psychologically, your specific anxieties, your fears, those are the cards you were dealt. But the imposed limitations that you can't act a certain way because you're not that type of person, that's completely your own imagination that came up with that. That's not even the cards that you were dealt. So when I say play your cards differently, I don't mean maneuver around your fears differently. I mean accept no negotiation from fear whatsoever. We have to stop coming to the table with sort of peace offerings in mind to fears and anxieties. It's because we believe there's an outside force looking to humble us if we are somehow too evolved and go too far beyond our fears and anxieties where we almost abandon them and leave them in the past. Why are we unconsciously afraid to leave our fears and anxieties behind? It's because those same fears and anxieties still have a stronger hold on us than we were led to believe. There's no outside force limiting you. There are no limitations. Zero. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you're watching on YouTube and if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you for listening. And other than that, I will catch you guys in the next one. And if you're listening to this now, there is a decent chance my new book, Stop Abusing Your Self-Awareness, is already out. And if not, if you are one of the few maybe listening to this the night that I drop it, then be on the lookout for that tomorrow. Other than that, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.